Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector, Kolonas, and LaRosa.
Welcome to another episode of This Week in Coworking. We're back yet again for one of our newsletter recap episodes. My name is LaRosa. I'm joined by our fearless leader, Hector Kolonas, my co-host for this podcast. And we've got a special guest that's dialing in the middle of the night. Thank you, Tashi Dorjee, for joining us on this week's episode. Great to see you. I'm a big fan of your content and love the conversation that you had with Hector earlier this year. And we're glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I know we're going to tackle a couple different news topics this week. We've got a story that we thought was possibly April Fool, and we all had to get checked on that. We're going to dive into one of my favorite topics, which is hotels and co-working. And I know that's something that Tashi's got a lot of experience in. We're also going to talk about an interesting partnership IWG announced and a few other stories, but there was one kind of news-ish item that's a little bit in our own backyard or in our own house. So Hector and Tashi, you've got something that you're working on. Without further ado, I'll let you all take it away and share with our audience what you've got cooking up.
Absolutely. So I want to jump in and give some background. Obviously, we share a lot of content through the newsletter. We share a lot of ideas, thoughts, videos, discussions that people are doing around the world. And one thing we kept finding, and Mike, you agree, I think we were fanboying around Tashi earlier in a previous episode. Whenever we do share something from Tashi, people resonate with it. It's well done. It's a great story. It's valuable. It's insightful. So a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago, I don't know when it was, Tashi, we were like, we got to do something more together. What can we do as This Week in Coworking and Tashi to work together? And we came up with a great idea. Tashi, tell us what we're going to be doing together and what people should be expecting to hear from you.
Yeah, I think great minds think alike, but also unalike sometimes. But irrespective, they're still great. I think what we thought would be super valuable is that if we came together and did a bit of a video podcast series, because I'm a huge fan of listening to great content, but also seeing the people and their mannerisms, because I don't know whether it's just me or the way my brain works. I really listen when I can see them too. And what I bring to the table that I think has always resonated with your audience is, even though I have the co-working and flex background, because I lead a team on behalf of a Fortune 200 company that is JLL in commercial real estate services, I get to play in so many different sandboxes in that world. So I represent the landlords, I represent major tenants, I design, build, and operate these spaces. So we thought a series would be really cool to bring that holistic perspective, right? So rather than just speak to people within the co-working and flex space who all have incredible insights, right? How cool would it be if we got a major landlord investor on the series to tell us what they think about co-working literally from the horse's mouth and how they look at it from an asset valuation perspective, how they approve these deals, why they think it's important. And this particular guest we've got lined up, not to spoil it, because I think we'll announce it all later, we're responsible for some of the most iconic assets in Australia, in Melbourne, right? So literally the decisions they had to make were, if they were going to do co-working or flex in their building, it was circa $30 million decision. So that's a huge decision-making process from a fund perspective. And that doesn't even belittle the smaller deals. It's just really fascinating to see how some of these forward thinkers think and how they get it approved. Because even though co-working and flex has grown and evolved, it's still got a ways to go from a traditional real estate perspective. And then similarly, I want to bring on the head of a design firm, across the region to tell us what kind of design trends are happening, not just within office and hotels and retail, but how he sees co-working coming in and leveraging it, because he's a big fan of flex. We work together quite a lot. HR, human resources expert. I think that's an untapped perspective, because they see what employees need, what companies are asked to deliver for their employees from an office and flex perspective, employee surprise and delight, all that kind of stuff, technology. So I won't rant through the whole series, but this is what we're trying to bring with this particular chapter that we want to deliver. So by the end of all 6 episodes, and I'm gonna contribute, but I'll limit the amount I talk. My job will be to extract really good value from it. You walk away going, oh wow, I've got this really well-rounded view of what flex looks like in a modern day commercial real estate perspective from all these different people. to really have people think differently, even the way they approach Flex when they speak to some of these people moving forward. So that's why we thought it would be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And there's so many conversations you could have, right? There's so many people that we know in Australia, brands we love, and we had to cap it somewhere. But we also knew that there's more to APAC than just Australia. So we're starting with 6 episodes as a pilot in Australia. We're all raring to go. We're just waiting to finalize who's going to be presenting this as the sponsors. As soon as that's all ready, we'll be coming out and giving you a bit more information around when you can expect it. I know Tashi's raring to go on his side. I know that the guests are all excited. Everyone's pumped. I'm really glad that we as a newsletter can start highlighting more local stories, more local champions, more local experts. And so I'm really excited about this. I know, Mike, we were chatting about it yesterday offline as we're building the newsletter this week. We're really excited and we know that it's going to be fantastic. So I'm just smiling ear to ear. I'm just happy we're going to be able to do this all together, and it's going to be a good one. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, we're making, just the last thing, we're making an effort to do all of these interviews in person as well. So when we shoot it, you've got that human to human interaction face to face. So it helps with the conversation. We'll have cameras and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to helping produce it too.
I'm really excited about it because this is all our podcasting has been like this, right? I love it because we get to have this global views and I get to interact with folks like you who, what is it, like 6:30 a.m. right now?
Yeah.
And we get to have these conversations, but I also see the true value in those human to human, as you say, connections and conversations and feeding off each other's energy. And it's going to be fun to put that out.
Yeah, I was about to say, watch out, Stephen Bartlett. We're going to be checking up the production quality on This Week in Coworking. No, we're super excited to have you join the fam and put together this series. I know it's been 10 years since I first traveled to Asia for co-working business and learning about the market and whatnot. And it's always been one that fascinates me and I think is in many ways ahead of the curve. I think the North American market can get focused on itself, and Hector and I sit here, which is normal, but the most fascinating stories I tend to find are coming from other spots in the world. Who knows where else it will take us? But no matter where it goes, I don't know, I might want to go there on a co-working bus. So that leads us to our next story. And full transparency, I actually had a double, triple check. I thought maybe Hector got caught. I thought maybe Hector was trying to April Fool's me. But there is a story in the newsletter this week about a co-working bus. And I think this is really an interesting concept. So there's a Swiss co-working brand called West Hive Co-working Ecosystem, and they've partnered with what I believe is like an activation company to design these beautiful converted double-decker buses, which will have a coffee bar, Wi-Fi, power outlets, and looks like a little mini indoor workstation. And then they've got outdoor seating area as well. And it's so interesting. There's 3 different players in this partnership. There's the co-working brand themselves that have locations throughout Switzerland. There is also this activation company that is somehow connected with this co-working brand or maybe a member or whatnot. And then the third one is Airbnb. And Airbnb is actually doing this as a partnership through their Live and Work Anywhere program. And so you'll be able to book these on Airbnb. So I was looking for a little bit more information, didn't find a link to click on right away, but they did say that it'll be coming out on Airbnb. It'll be interesting to see who books these. Are people booking them for themselves? Are they booking them for maybe their group of friends? Or maybe do you have a company that's gonna try to book it? But it was nonetheless a fun story and was definitely not April Fool's. So I would love to hear what you two have to say about it.
I definitely thought we all got, like where I saw, I also triple checked it before I made sure I submitted it to you because I know how busy we are. And I'm like, I don't want to waste your time, but I'm pretty sure this is a real thing. Not only because it looks legit, but because I've also been on a co-working bus in 2014. So I'm like, that it's been done. So there's no reason why it
Exactly.
wouldn't be done again. But
There's been
the
co-working
last,
trains, right? There's been co-working
exactly.
boats. There's been so it's like
This is true. This is true. But what's really interesting is like the last point you brought up, the fact that, see, Airbnb is a really clever company. And when they start testing new markets, they don't test it with the most obvious choice. They test it with something that's a little bit more viral, a little bit more shareable. And I would not be surprised if this goes really well and it is used for like team getaways and team meetings.
Mm.
that they wouldn't start looking at how do they start stepping into that revenue? How do they start tying up, going after Hubly's core market, going after the other Workspace play platforms? So I say look between the lines, right? I would not be surprised if this is just them in a softer market testing if there is demand for adding a new revenue stack or new revenue piece to your global offering.
Yeah, I totally subscribe to that thinking. Like if I think about it, even as a landlord, I would love those buses to help activate some of my buildings that don't have that co-working element. It's a low barrier for entry to provide and test it. And it's almost like some of those large activations that go full day for people in them. If you book a bus and they can work there as well. So you can't and also as a new parent, it's a really low hanging fruit way to have buses booked outside daycare centers or creches. So if you've got a kid and you just need to get a few hours of work done, imagine, and that could be a viral partnership that they do that way. And buses, like what's one of the most traditional ways buses generate revenue? Branding on the bus. Immediately, is there opportunities aside from your bus to put some co-working prevalent or work prevalent stuff on there that's relevant to that? Looks different, so it doesn't just look like a bus, so it's more valuable than just your bus flyers. And I'm a huge fan of, it's so funny. You know, the saying I always used to say, co-working is a vehicle for human interaction and connectivity. This is literally a vehicle for that.
Yeah.
So the pun's funny, but I see if I had my mad scientist cap on and this was my company, the play could almost be a tech play. Like you eventually create an app that connects these like hundreds of thousands of people eventually, because your anchor are these buses and not spaces that you're paying rent on. So you can have an infinite amount and they're pop-ups. So it's almost like the major plays a platform, a community platform where everyone could work from home or connect with one another. But then as the brand that does it, every now and then you book buses and you send them around and it turns up on the app and they're like, oh shit, yeah, okay, we'll go work there. So you gamify it a bit. I think there's a lot of fun there, man.
That is actually really interesting because like the whole time I was thinking about this until Mike mentioned it, I didn't remember that buses move because the one I went on, it was a static bus in a parking lot and that's kind of the thing. And the fact that it actually moves is interesting. So I remember when Uber launched in a bunch of cities, like we did their activations with some of them in like Manchester, Brighton, Bristol, etc. And we basically used the Uber app to order ice cream trucks in the middle of summer to come to the co-working space. And yes, it's fun and it's a cool perk, but it was giving them a lot of data about where people are congregating. And so if you take that to like the co-working side and you just think of it purely from the data play, if I'm a co-working operator and I know that the bus keeps getting called to this specific suburb or this nursery or this daycare or whatever it is, I'm going to start thinking, how do I activate a smaller space, a hub, an unmanned, unstaffed location, something there in the same way as all these teams are using all these aggregators to figure out where they should launch offices. So it's just an interesting thing. We're definitely ahead of it. I don't know if they even have a fleet of buses. I think they have one bus, but I can totally see the technologists in us.
I've got an idea for them. Here's a campaign for them. They got to do it. Because there's a bunch of science and psychology about how you work differently and think differently depending on your surroundings. They should do a think different campaign. Like you buy a day pass or a week pass and you work with a community of people and it takes you to a museum and then you work outside the museum or some significant architecture. Then it takes you to a beach. Then it takes you to like the 4 spots and the whole campaign, whether it works or not, because it's still within a bus. Hey, get inspired with us. Come for the day. I think that would be a really cool marketing campaign, even just to get the brand out, because it embraces the whole where do you want to work and how do you want to think kind of thing.
I got a better idea for them. They call the This Week in Co-working team. They put all of us on the bus and we just make content there for a whole week. And then we'll tell that story. Folks at West High, give us a call. Numbers at the bottom or we'll make it happen.
Yeah, it was such a fun story. It reminds me of the back in the day when it was cutthroat between Industrious and WeWork, right? And those infamous stories of WeWork setting up those mobile co-working spaces outside. And then was it maybe the summer or two before COVID, Industrious actually did a really cool partnership with LL Bean, right? Where they were doing like these outdoor kind of pop-ups. What was so neat, and this ties into our next story about co-working and hotels colliding, is that this was like taking that marketing concept one step farther by actually then turning it into a product itself, which was really cool. And that speaks to the what companies are looking for these offsites or just to help these remote teams. But that leads us to the next story. There was a big announcement that in Rome, the social hub has opened a massive new location. This is a co-working space that can fit up to 160 people, but the facility is also a four-star hotel with just under 400 rooms. So this is a really large project. It comes fully complete with typical hotel additions such as meeting areas and dining facilities with a rooftop bar and whatnot. So I think we've talked about it a bunch. I know my soapbox is always about the hotelification of office space and kind of the collision of where corporations are spending their money. They're cutting it down on real estate and they're putting it more into these experiences and meetups. But Tashi, I know you've got specific background and experience in this. The listeners have heard me with my spiel long enough, but what's your take on this and what's your experience in it and what do you see happening?
Yeah, I've got two perspectives on this. One is because I used to run a co-working startup that turned restaurants and hotels into co-working spaces. That was called Two Space, and hotels was a big angle. And the second one I'll address afterwards because it's more recently I've worked with hotel owners trying to put co-working in. Um, from that early experience, hotels need the co-working because even if you're 100% occupied, everyone stays in their rooms and there's no reason to come into their lobbies or restaurants. So the public areas, they've always had challenges feeling like a bit of a ghost town, even though it's and they always were looking for ways to get guests down there. So having a place for them to work, connect, and have a partner to help facilitate that is extremely valuable. Because also when you think about a lot of hotels, the way they're designed, even if they have a public restaurant or bar, a lot of people don't walk in because they think there's a stigma that you have to be a guest or they're not allowed to go in there. So that's always a challenge with hotels. And back then for us, the operating cost was really low in hotels, which is something that's also prevalent to the second thing I'll bring up. Because when we did our co-working startup, we had to have a person on every site when we would convert a restaurant closed during the day, and there's a cost. Whereas with a hotel, they've got site on 24/7. So if you integrate with them properly and you train them, the hotel concierge could also have the same conversation and be trained that way. And then they've got staff in the cafe or the bar area turning over things, or even there's people there. And we leveraged the hotel Wi-Fi network connectivity. So aside from having to always be physically dealing with people, if you check into the Wi-Fi, we created the co-working specific one, you'd get a virtual concierge, a pop-up. It would show you who else is working in the hotel, blah, blah, blah. I love the co-working and hotel idea, even if you don't specifically build for the co-working space and you try and leverage those public spaces, I still think there's something there if you've got the technology and the partnership with them to facilitate it. The second angle is that more recently, over the last 2 years, I've been working on major developments where it's a big hotel, similar, like maybe 200, 300 to 400 rooms, and room revenue eclipses co-working revenue. So the amount they make off the rooms is ridiculous. So the co-working element is always a value add, like commercial real estate. 20 floors might be tenants, and then you've got 2-3 floors of co-working, but way more returns on the rooms. The angle there is with the hotelification of co-working and commercial real estate. Who better to do it than a major hotel operator? Because even when we were trying to structure those deals, yes, we'd bring the co-working element to it and the filling capability, because what hotel owners don't know how to do is to run a co-working business. It's a lot harder than it seems, especially when they're on short-term licenses. But then any, customer service element or food element would literally just be a cost lifted from the Flex P&L because you'd have all of that stuff integrated into the building and the commercial real estate, all that kind of thing. So I think that's a huge opportunity. And plus then the hotel could specifically target very high-end digital nomads or professional guests. Hey, don't stay in the hotel across the road. Stay with us because we've got this really dope workspace for you. It's not just a lounge. It's a proper co-working facility for you guys. I actually think it's the future. And to your point around de-risking assets, a lot of multi-purpose assets, even in Australia, being built, where instead of it's being full commercial, and this is great for co-working and flex, the bottom might be hotels. The middle part would be some sort of turnover co-working floor, like communal floor to service the office from the bottom. And then the top is commercial real estate to take advantage of the high rents and the high views. And then, so a lot of that stuff thinking,
Yeah, we've got More uncommon than I realized, Tashi. We got the JLL thing going for us, and I also put a co-working space in a hotel in Dubai. So I see the future from my perspective is these corporations are trying to solve for one-stop shopping for meetings, right? And those of
Mm.
you that know me know I wear a couple different hats. I'm working with an 800 person fully remote company right now on helping them understand how to do these offsites. How do we bring all of these employees together? And so we're in this hotel, we've got 500 plus rooms, but the meeting rooms really don't work for some of those departments. And those departments are
Mhm.
now saying, I want something with a window. And so now we're like, that's where the co working piece comes in from, right? The project I worked on. Trip was this like underutilized space that the hotel couldn't figure out what to do with, but had some windows. And then they were also trying to figure out how to increase their corporate sales. So we came up with a rest and nest package, right? Hey, you've got these consultants flying in, you don't have a place for them at the office specifically. Why don't you just put them to work where in the same building where they are, sleeping at night? So it's really interesting to see. I don't know what you can share from down under if you're seeing these similar trends, but I'm noticing that companies are the spend is shifting, right? And so these companies are like, we're not spending this much money on real estate anymore, but we are providing our employees with either additional benefits and amenities or co-working stipends, or they're just spending money on experiences, right? Like the IT team is going to be in Boston. There's 20 of them for 3 days. We've got a sales quarterly business review for 250 in Arizona. It's just so fast. And these hotels then don't necessarily have all that workspace that are like the large convention center type locations that have maybe a business center or whatnot. So I think sky's the limit. And to your point, Tashi, I think it's the right path forward for diversification of any asset, right? We're going to see these stacks of a whole combo, maybe a little retail, maybe a little flex, amenity activation, maybe a little hotel or whatnot. So
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening because
yeah,
those developments take years to get off the ground. These conversations, thankfully, have been happening for 3, 4 years already in Australia.
yeah,
So hopefully they'll be breaking ground and being built. And funnily enough, the developers who are doing it are the hotel ones first. So without throwing major brands out there, and getting smacked when I go to the office, the ones that own major
yeah,
hotel brands are the ones that are also investing in commercial real estate, but doing the multi-purpose, the retail, they call it
yeah.
vertical villages. You've probably heard that term, but I think it is a really good way to de-risk your asset as well, because a lot of the overseas investors and the money even flowing into Australia and Asia, there's still a significant amount of commercial real estate money. Some of that percentages have been shaved off to go into other buckets just in response to COVID.
Yeah, it's interesting. We saw Accor make a move, right? They acquired a French-based co-working brand. Marriott put in a lot of work to reposition their Sheraton offering to be more kind of community co-working centric in the lobby. It's pretty exciting. And on the topic of remote workers or those that are working and traveling, this partnership that launched from IWG and Jabber Box this week, I believe it was like rumored. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to get myself in trouble, Hector, because Hector and I will read a news story and then we're like, did that already come out or did we maybe just know about it before it came out? I don't know. But anyway, I somehow in the back of my head I knew that these two companies were working together, but now we officially know how.
Yep.
And so there was a big announcement this past week at a business travel conference, I believe, and IWG and Jabberbox have officially entered into a partnership where they're going to install, this is a massive number, 3,700 of these Jabber Box pods. And there's two different types. Some of them are single user pods, and some of them are 4-person pods, which are also ADA or wheelchair accessible, which I thought was really important for them to
Mhm.
highlight and point out. And they're sprinkling them through different airports, train stations, retail centers, but also in IWG's Regis branded locations. And the boxes have a Regis co-brand on them. So I've been wondering why this type of thing wasn't around forever. And in full transparency, one of the aggregators I worked with years ago, we had discussed this, right? Like, how do we connect with some of these? We've seen some of these smaller companies pop up, these little phone booths, but then how do you book them? And if you just don't want to have people directly connecting via their app, what's the potential? So this looks like maybe this is the first big play in this type of niche vertical of all flex where the idea is to expand that Regis brand. So these will be bookable through what I would imagine is one of the IWG instant digital platforms at some point, not to mention through their own app. But yeah, I've done enough of the talking. I'd love to hear what you two think.
Yeah, I want to jump in and be like, yeah, I always have that issue when I'm like, I think even when we've started curating, I'm like, did we go and check their profile? Because we have brand profiles on the site. Go and check their profile. Have we already shared this? Because we have a rule at This Week in Coworking, we cannot share what is not a publicly linkable resource. So if it's email gated or it's gossip or it's unofficial or it's embargoed, we cannot share it because we want to share content with you that is useful to you, but also that is legit and public. And so I also had that kind of juggle around. I'm so pretty sure we knew about this, and I think other people knew about it, but I went back and checked with Jeremy, and yes, this is the official announcement. So it is something we can talk about. But it also goes back to the podcast I released this week where I spoke to Ben Wright from Instant about their whole aggregation strategy and their tech platform. So definitely, wherever you're listening or watching this, go back and find that episode from earlier this week. It's a good insight into what could happen with the activation of these locations. But I'm also very interested about where these are going to be. Because if you know anything about putting adverts in airports or train stations, they know how many people are walking through there and they charge you a fortune for putting ads in there. But now if you have a standalone, good looking, even if you don't use it, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Who do you associate that good idea with? Whoever's name is on the box. And right now that's going to be IWG and Regis. So really clever partnership, even if the utilization isn't as high as we all hope it would be. Very interesting. But there's also one tiny thread. All three stories we talked about are about workspaces outside of the traditional co-working space. So it just dawned on me now that yes, this is a co-working newsletter, co-working podcast, but the ecosystem of work is expanding. And we have to keep thinking about how does that impact our businesses? How does that impact the people who are going to use us? Maybe not every day, but the 3 days that they're near our office or the 3 days they want to put their headphones in. And how do we fit into this ecosystem of how life and work is going to smush?
Yeah, I think, and the underlying thing there as well is what's the glue that connects it all? I think it's the technology. I still think someone has to create this really schmick user-friendly app where irrespective of the location you are, you see the community spread across the region, across the world, and you can connect with them. And then you've got all these spaces that's the vehicle for human interaction. It's not like a LinkedIn because a LinkedIn exists, but imagine if a LinkedIn suddenly announced, hey, we've got these thousands of work locations now scattered across the world so that not only can you speak to your business or connections or whatever, you can go work from these spaces because they've already got the tech, but you want to like change it up so it's more communal and less probably wanky when you post stuff. And I'm responsible for that kind of stuff as well. I like the box thing. I really do. Because in a very highly competitive market, what are you doing differently? Like when you really think about it, all of these different operators, big, small, yes, the community is important, but at the end of the day, when you're dealing with space, it really comes down to what the fit out looks like, and you know what the look and feel and everything looks like. I think maybe you saw my wife poke in to see what was going on just with the baby coming out. Yeah, if you saw. So it's like I subscribe to that. What are you doing differently? And to your point, Hector, I think it's really interesting, like being smart around that advertising and that exposure. Because also coming back to the tech piece, if someone comes in and works there, surely they're capturing their details somehow, or they're getting some sort of very low entry point into the brand experience and platform. It's a really good way to get, I always used to call it the happy meal of co-working when I did Two Space back in the day, because when they eventually do need space or like, do get interested and they mature along their journey, they'll be ordering Big Macs and all that kind of stuff later on, which is proper office space from you guys. So I like it. I think we need more different ideas. Yes, we all re-rent space and we have community and activation, but why would someone be a member with you when they could arguably get that exact same service somewhere else? And then, yeah, I know all the brands are going to be yelling at me going, it's not the same thing and blah, 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 because we do things differently. I totally get it. But tangibly, is there another kind of quirky products that you offer? Like the Jabber boxes and stuff, gym memberships beyond contra promotions with local retail experiences anyway. Yeah.
There's just one thing that you said, and I'm going to completely disagree with you. No one has to build another slick booking platform, the future booking platform will be invisible. That's what this is like my hill. I will die there. The systems are smart enough to know what's important to you, my kid, my whatever, like where I am, which city I'm in, what's on my calendar, what's in my email. And then it also should know what spaces are available around me. And when those things come together, I will be told by my calendar where I'm working, what I'm doing. It will be booked. My card will be billed. And that's, I think, the future. Personally, that's what I believe. I
agree.
cannot see my kid in the future opening an app and being like, oh, which desk do I want to sit at? Which building do I want to sit at? I just cannot see that being the future.
So imagine if the invisible platform you're speaking to, which I completely agree with, has some form of community element to it. I guess when I say tech, it's more about the people and the community and the connectivity. The bookability part of it, totally agree. Seamless, way more seamless.
I love that. So it is that human social network. And it's, I think, somewhere deep inside why WeWork bought Meetup. Like, I think that was where they were aiming for. If you have the congregation of people and the people that are important to you, I'm surprised Meta has never even looked in this direction, to be honest. But if you have that network, that graph, that social graph, and you overlay it with physical space, there is something magical there. And no one has got it right yet. And when they do, we'll bring him right here on the podcast and talk about it. There was one more story that we want to jump in. I know we're very short on time here. We did see a pretty interesting funding round coming out of Monday. That was a Spanish operator. They're planning a huge expansion. They announced that their revenue went up to 14 million euros. I always love sharing revenue numbers out of Europe because everyone's co-working is not profitable. Co-working is a small niche industry. Co-working is like for $55 at a time. Yes, 14 million euros for one brand in Spain is a good revenue. It's a growing piece of the pie. And they were recently acquired by a PE firm in the last weeks of 2024. And now they're just going for it. I think they're trying to double up their user base from 4,000 users or 4,000 members to 8,000. They're going from, I think it's 50,000 square meters to 80,000 square meters. They're on a tear. We're going to keep watching them on and cheering on a whole bunch of other celebrations in the newsletter. Two spaces celebrating birthdays over 10 years old. And we saw a whole bunch of other great news stories. So if you are listening in and you're like, Hector, tell us more about that. No, go read the newsletter, thisweekincoworking.com, click on week 14, and we'll be back next week in your inbox. Before I say bye-bye, folks, anything else you want to add before we jump out?
Yeah, because I know she's one of your biggest cheerleaders, Alkaloid Networks. We can't just say there was a couple of big celebrations. So we want to give a major shout out to Catherine and the community at Alkaloid, because it's a great space that I love working out of in Atlanta, and 10 years is quite the accomplishment for being an independent. Also, major shout out and congrats to Catherine.
Absolutely. And they are now the longest running independent co-working space in Atlanta. So another hat tip to them. Tashi, anything else to add before we say goodbye and you get back to the beginning of your day?
No, it was great. But if you pay attention closely to the lighting in this room, like you've seen the sun come up. It's pitch black now. You can vaguely see some trees and stuff behind me. But this was a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun. And I'm sorry if it went a bit on longer because I know sometimes I rant and I think I'm responsible for
You
it.
could have gone on a lot longer. Like I said, I'm enjoying this. I've got two great accents to listen to. I feel like I'm the odd man out here. So I might have to pick up one between now and the next.
This format is sick because even I'm learning a lot. It's like you learn as you investigate and you share information to your community. It's a hack for learning and upgrading even your own knowledge. It's really cool, guys. I love it.
It is. And there's one thing I really love is hearing where people listen, right? Hearing from kind of the folks like, oh, I listened to this on the way to go pick up my kids, or I listened to this on the way before my meeting. We listened to this with our team over lunch on a Friday. I'm like, what? That's just so interesting to keep hearing these stories. And so I'm super delighted that both of you joined me today, that you are so great at sharing your insights and learning in front of everyone, right? That's the great thing, because we're all here sharing, but we're also here learning. So till next week, ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.